Hello and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand, and what a day weather-wise yesterday. Records falling right across Nova Scotia, records falling out at Stanfield International, records falling over at Shearwater. I saw some records in a number of places here in Nova Scotia as we enjoyed what was probably should have been maybe July or August temperatures yesterday. It was 31 and change on my deck. Now, of course, that's an unofficial temperature, but it was 31 degrees on the deck when I got home yesterday, and it stayed warm all night. It was kind of nice to be able to sit outside after supper last night with a tea and enjoy some of the warm temperatures. And I got to tell you, and it was something that I've seen this over the years. But at this time of the year, with the light levels getting to where they're at, if you've ever been around the Clayton Park area, Bears Lake, or Dunbrack, or areas around there in October, have you seen the flight of the crows? There were thousands upon thousands of crows flying overhead last night. Now, I know that we've done stories on it, and folklore has it that it goes back to a colony that was at the Mount way back when, and these are all descendants of, but it was by the thousands last night. It was just something to see. Anyway, it's October. It's that time of the year, and we do see it every year, but you kind of forget about it, and then all of a sudden there it is, right? The downside to yesterday's weather, of course, is that we saw a small increase yesterday of the fire out at Lake George. So that fire remaining out of control. Still no structures up to the last update that I read, I think last night or this morning. No structures impacted by this fire, but it is gaining a bit in size. And then, of course, the other bit of news yesterday out of the Department of Natural Resources was that the Long Lake fire, a hot spot there, flared up yesterday. It's not done yet. Right? They still say it's under control, and there's a little concern there, but residents certainly are going to see some smoke from it. Certainly going to see smoke from the wildfire at Lake George. Still some evacuations underway there, but again, the good news, at least to this point, is that there is no structural damage at Lake George to report as of today. Also, our good friends over on the Facebook page, the Nova Scotia Fire and Emergency Info, reporting this morning that HRFE were called out to a fire in the woods on Walter Havel Drive down towards Chain Lake Drive. You could probably see some smoke coming from the woods there today, confirming that there was a fire in the area of St. Margaret's Bay Road and Dunbrack this morning. So if you spotted some smoke out there, that's likely what it is. Our news team, of course, is digging into that to see if we can get you some information. So we're not out of the woods, and that's a bad pun, not intended, with regards to the wildfire situation here and yesterday's weather not helping a whole lot. Well, many eyes will be on television screens tonight, will they not, as the Toronto Blue Jays continue their American League Division Series against the New York Yankees. Teams have traveled to New York. Game 3 goes at 9 o'clock tonight from Yankee Stadium, which anybody that has played there or has been there or has watched it a lot knows is a very difficult place for the visiting team to play. It's kind of legendary, isn't it? Even though it's not the original, it's still pretty legendary, and I know Yankee fans are going to be on the edges of their seats as their beloved Bronx Bombers are 2-0 down in the best of 5 ALDS to our, of course, beloved Blue Jays, who can end the series tonight. And what a message would that be if they could end the series in 3 straight, get the brooms out, as the saying goes, and sweep the Yankees out of the playoffs, and then look forward to, of course, we don't want to, prejudge things, and we don't want to get too cocky about stuff, but it would be something, wouldn't it, if the Jays were able to complete the sweep of this series and then march on until to the American League Championship Series. That would be something else. And I know that Blue Jays Nation will be out in force today and tonight to cheer on the Bluebirds as they try to do something that we haven't seen them do very often. So let's go Jays. And of course, as always, you will hear the action live from Yankee Stadium tonight at 9 o'clock right here on 95.7 News Radio. I hope that you can tune in, because there is nothing better, in my opinion, than listening to a baseball game on the radio. It's the way that it probably should be, but maybe I'm just old school. Also, some hockey news to pass along. Yeah, NHL season starts tonight. The wait is over, as Vanessa rolls her eyes. There's a couple of games on the schedule tonight. Of course, as you heard in the sports with Simon, the Florida Panthers will raise their banner at their rink in Florida tonight, is in front of the Chicago Blackhawks and Connor Bedard to kick off the season. Of course, there's 84 games, now 82 games this year with an expanded schedule because of the Olympics. I don't know where I'm at with the Olympic Games. I get it that the Olympics should be best on best. I get it that we saw the entire nation get behind Team Canada when they did that Four Nations thing last year. I know that it would be and is the premier event, at least in this country, when the Winter Olympics happen. Part of me likes to see sort of the amateur end of thing, but we know that it's just not hockey that the amateur athletes have been kind of edged out on. We see it in the Summer Olympics. We see it in other events in the Olympics where professional athletes have taken over. I think that's probably the way of the future. And why not have a best-on-best tournament every 4 years at the Olympic Games? That's going to happen in February. But the NHL season will go tonight. And I know that some of you will have a couple of TVs on watching. Well, maybe you'll watch the NHL game on the TV, and then you can listen to the Blue Jays game right here on the radio. That would be a sports fan's euphoria. What else is going on? Prime Minister Carney is in Washington today for an audience with Donald Trump. Now, will we see a deal? It depends who you talk to. There's some are reporting that there may be some movement in the steel tariffs that the Prime Minister is going down there to sign with President Trump. Others are saying, nope, nothing happening. I don't know. And, of course, we'll be watching like everybody else is watching. I would hope, and maybe this is me being a bit naive, but I would hope that if a meeting is called between two world leaders and Mr. Carney has to pack up and travel down to the White House and do all of the stuff that happens when you go to the White House with Donald Trump, that there would be something that would come out of this. It wouldn't be just a cup of tea or something with the president, because that would certainly be a gargantuan waste of time, would it not? Anyway, we'll keep an eye on what's going on. That meeting is supposed to happen around noon today, Atlantic time. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on it, and if we see anything before the show's over, we will certainly pass that along to you here on the program. Regional Council meeting tonight. Dartmouth Cove is on the agenda. We've had both sides of that discussion here. We had councillors in here yesterday talking about it. That public meeting goes at 6 o'clock tonight, I think. Council also is going to debate, you heard it in the news this morning, a construction mitigation fund. This is something that gets bannered around an awful lot at council, but really have not seen any action on this. And what this fund would do would help to support businesses that are impacted by big construction projects, particularly in the downtown cores, right? When we saw the convention center being built in downtown Halifax, for example, a lot of the area businesses say they suffered because roads were closed and sidewalks were tore up and people were unable to park and all of the things that come with the construction season around here. So now council is going to debate a motion. Then Councillor Morse put the motion forward to see if the city should come up with some kind of funding for businesses in downtown Halifax. And, of course, they're also going to discuss getting rid of what I would consider to be a badly conceived Spring Garden Road transportation corridor. You remember when that happened? You remember they decided that they were going to make it bus only for parts of the day and they would just put a sign up and people would listen to it? Well, they didn't. I don't even think it made a week. And they stopped that. So they're going to get rid of that and take another look at what's going on with transit on Spring Garden Road tonight. And we should learn some more about this past Friday's bombshell, can I call it? From the province that all of HRM is now designated as an interim planning area, right? This was dropped by Minister John Lohr on Friday. Councillors that were in here yesterday and other councillors that were quoted in the paper over the weekend said they didn't even know that this was coming. Apparently, this order will remove barriers to development, according to the province, that would require the municipality to permit residential uses and zones, changes density, changes height restrictions, removes on-site parking requirements for residential buildings within the service area. This is something I'm going to open up the phone lines on it after 11 o'clock today. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. I know we've talked about provincial government overreach before, or provincial government intervention's probably the right word for that, when it came to the kerfuffle that was Morris Street and the bike lanes. But this is a bit of a bigger piece, I think. And this is really going to take the control away from council on just about everything that council would deal with zoning, particularly along watercourses and particularly along shorelines. And if you sit back and if you follow the dots, or you connect the dots or follow the map, do you remember when the provincial government said that they weren't going to proclaim the Coastal Protection Act and that they were going to download that onto the municipalities because they knew better how to deal with it? Well, now in HRM, which is a big chunk of Nova Scotia, they don't have any control over that development now. So it's back in the province's hands. So is this a backdoor way to get rid of this Coastal Protection Act and make themselves not look as bad? Maybe it's a conspiracy theory, something you might want to talk about after 11 o'clock today. We're going to stop. We're going to take our very first break here on the Tuesday edition of the show. When we come back, a conversation with a Liberal leader in Nova Scotia. Derek Mombourquette will be your guest. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back to the Tuesday edition of the program. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. Let's see. Omnibus bills, stifled debates, and MLAs weren't even in the House long enough for that new chamber, that new car smell to leave the chamber before they were out again. 8 days was the length of the session this time around, and I know a lot of you out there are questioning why we have such short sessions here, and I think one of the people that's questioning that is our next guest, and that is Liberal leader and MLA, of course, Derek Mombourquette from the Liberals. Derek, how are you?
Good, Dan. How are you?
Did you even get the new car smell out?
That's a great description. It was my 10 years, probably the shortest session I've been involved with outside of the pandemic. 8 days were there. You see these omnibus bills come forward with topics that are unrelated to each other. Debate is limited. It's really unfortunate. The public really loses in the end, because what we want is feedback from the public when it comes to legislation that comes to the floor of the House, and with these bills and the way they operated, it was very difficult for the public to do that.
Derek, you were in government in your time. Why, in your opinion, do you think that the Tories here are so adverse to having any kind of length to a session?
Well, the longer they're in there, you've seen in the past with them, problems arise. The longer that they're in the House and the longer that the debate goes, people see these bills for what they are. The last session we saw legislation come forward where the government wanted to fire the Auditor General. They passed legislation around firing a public service without cause. There was a lot of conversation around blocking the media, sending letters out to their potential supporters. So, they had a rough first session, and they went into this one, and obviously they wanted to be in and out as quick as possible, because they know the longer they're in there, the more trouble they get in.
It's difficult to try and break a bill apart at the best of times, not when there's 6 or 7 or 8 different and unrelated pieces attached to it, right?
Absolutely, and as I said, it really deters the public consultation side. So if you look at these bills, there was some good work in the bills, and then there's some very controversial things that come out of these omnibus bills. And when you don't break them out, you go into public bills where people will have an opportunity from communities or organizations to come in and provide feedback. They're looking at a bill with inconsistent topics where if you break these all out, this gives the public bills process a chance to really focus down on what each individual piece of that legislation is, and they should all be tabled as separate bills, and they're not. As I said, the government went into this 8 days later. We're out. They don't want to be there, and obviously when we were debating this, and the public is debating the length of this session, the government just doesn't care.
Derek, you as a party and as an organization also had some opportunity to place some legislation into the pipeline, so to speak, and one of them was your bill on banning use of social media for those underage. The government responded to that. Were you surprised at the way that they responded to it?
Yeah, I was. They responded by putting out an op-ed against the idea, and the question period between myself and the premier, I was disappointed in, because he just pivoted into us blocking opportunities for the province. This was a piece of legislation that in my 10 years as MLA saw some of the most feedback, and an important conversation around supporting our kids' mental health and ensuring our kids are safe online. And you're seeing jurisdictions all over the world look at this, and a lot of times it starts at the state level. So our goal and our last question of the day of the legislature was for the government to join us in this conversation, to have a conversation with the federal government, because ultimately that's where the change would be made. And they didn't want to participate, so it's really unfortunate. But I do want to thank the many organizations and the many advocates and the many Nova Scotians that stepped forward and said this is an important conversation to have.
They just kind of, and I'm paraphrasing, said that this wasn't a provincial jurisdiction. This was up to the feds, and kind of washed their hands of it.
Well, they did, in a sense. That was what they said. But what we've said, this has started at the state level and other jurisdictions around the world. And for us, in talking to families across the province, this was something that was important for us to bring forward on their behalf. So, we asked the government to pen a letter with us to the federal government to say, let's continue this conversation around, the social media and looking at the limitations that we can, and some of the things that we need to put in place to protect our kids.
A lot of bluster from the government before this session. In fact, the premier sat in this studio and said that he was upset about the potential for power rate increases, the potential for water rate increases. With the exception of getting intervener status with Nova Scotia Power, not a lot of stuff happened on that this session.
Not at all, and that was a big concern for us too, as well. As you look at some of the challenges that families are facing when it comes to the cost of living. We're all very aware of the rate increases coming from Nova Scotia Power and what we've seen around the data breach that we're still dealing with families right across the province. If you look at the cost of living, if you look at the reduction that they did in the heating rebate program, where the threshold has been now reduced to $30,000, and they reduced the grant from $600 to $400. That program really matters to people, and a lot of people won't be able to access it now. So, we went into this session. The government didn't bring much forward when it came to supporting families and the cost of living, and we're also seeing a trend where they cut a significant program because, in my opinion, they've lost control of the finances. We're now projecting a $1.2 billion deficit with no plan to address it.
We also learned on Friday that the province had placed HRM in its entirety under its control with regards to municipal planning, and that controls a bunch of things, density and parking restrictions, and the list goes on and on and on. This isn't the first time that the provincial government has waded into municipal matters. We understand that city councils work at the pleasure of the province, but do you think this is overreach? Do you think, or is this a smart decision on Minister Lohr's behalf?
Well, I used this comment on Friday that there was a lot of conversation around giving special mayor powers to the mayor's office in Halifax, but actually they gave themselves special mayor powers. They brought this out after there was any chance for us to debate this on the eighth and final day of the legislature. And I have a lot of respect for the elected body that is the HRM, mayor and council. I was a former councillor myself in the CBRM, so I have a lot of respect for the work that they do. They do a lot of work, really ground level work each and every day to support their residents. And to hear that the councillors were not aware that this was coming is really unfortunate. They are duly elected by the people in a democratic process, and they should have been aware that this was being tabled. I think it is a level of overreach for me when it comes to this. You have an elected body that was elected to represent the municipality. And the other big concern I have with this is around public engagement. So what does the public engagement look like? Okay. You have systems in place with council that people would be able to come in and provide public input on a new development. And what happens in this situation now, because the province is really taking over planning in the HRM.
In fact, we're seeing it tonight at Regional Council with the Dartmouth Cove situation and the infilling there. And you're right, I don't know what the procedure would be if Minister Lord decides that we're putting a development at X location and just stamps it, right?
Well, we just had an 8-day session of the legislature where we had a number of omnibus bills come forward with topics that weren't related to one another. So, that doesn't give me a good feeling about how the public planning and the public participation process is going to move forward now that the province has taken over planning in the HRM.
So what's next now for you in the Liberal Party, Derek? We don't know when the next session's going to be, so where do you go from here?
So for us, we will be out in communities across the province again. We'll be, we had a great summer where we were traveling all over Nova Scotia, talking about what matters to folks. And that's where you've seen some of the legislation that we tabled, the social media bill, some of the other work that we did. So we'll be continuing to do that too as well. It's a big year for us moving forward. We're moving into next year, which is our leadership. So, we're coming off of our annual general meeting 2 weeks ago where we had a few hundred people at the event. So lots of work to do, but first and foremost, it's about getting out there, engaging Nova Scotians and doing our best to represent them and talk to them about the issues that matter.
Do we have a date for that leadership contest?
Yeah, it's in November of 2026. So it's the date has been set. It's in the third week of the month, and we're looking forward to it. Lots of excitement, lots of conversation happening around that now. And as I said, the biggest thing for us in the first year was to get out, talk to Nova Scotians, engage, and we're coming off of a great annual general meeting where we had lots of Liberals and people who were interested in what we were talking about come forward in Halifax, and it was a good weekend.
Derek, appreciate your time, sir.
Hey, Dan. Always pleasure. Thanks, man.
That is Derek Mombourquette. He is the co-leader of the Provincial Liberal Party. That leadership date's in November of 26. So about a year out, and we will, of course, keep our eyes on who wants to throw their hat into the ring to try and resurrect the fortunes of the Liberal Party, who were decimated during the last election campaign, giving Tim Houston and the PCs here in Nova Scotia that supermajority, and they appear to be using that. And they're not breaking any rules. I want to be very clear that the provinces or the Houston government isn't breaking any rules with these sessions and the way that they're doing business with these omnibus bills. But it doesn't feel like it may not be breaking the letter of the law, but it does feel like they're breaking the spirit of the law, right? It's where we see democracy in action when you see, and I know question period is theater, and I know all of the stuff and the problems that people have with decorum and everything else down at Province House, but at least you can see and you can access it. Now, mark my words, until they announce the next session, we're going to get news release after news release, and once a week cabinets, if that, maybe once every 2 weeks, where ministers will answer questions, and that's what we'll see. And that, I don't think, is what our forefathers thought for the democracy here in Nova Scotia and in Canada. We're stopping. We're going to take a break. Record setters yesterday, a conversation with our good friend and weather specialist, Allister Aalders, will be your guest when we return. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Tuesday edition Of the Todd Veinotte Show, I'm Dan Alster. Glad you're able to spend a few minutes with us today. And I know that yesterday you were outside because there were a lot of people outside my neighborhood who were out enjoying that extra special treat that we got from Mother Nature. Something that I don't know if is a regular occurrence now, but it certainly doesn't happen all of the time, and that is seeing temperatures in near 30 or 30 in some places or even warmer in October. And that's what we saw here yesterday. A number of temperature records fell right across Nova Scotia. And, of course, when we talk about the weather, and we normally do it on Friday, but this is a special occasion, so we're very pleased to welcome back to the show our friend and weather specialist, and that is Allister Aalders. Allister, how are you?
Good, Dan. You know, I'll talk about weather any day of the week, not just Friday.
It's kind of your thing, right?
Yeah, just a little.
So, Allister, I guess let's get the records out here and get the record straight. There was like almost a dozen records that fell yesterday.
I mean, and it wasn't just in Nova Scotia either. I mean, it was in Prince Edward Island and New Brunswick too. But I mean, a number of records, like you just alluded to, fell in Nova Scotia, including in the Halifax area. The Shearwater record, yesterday I was a bit uncertain if we would break it, but we did. 28.5 degrees is what the mercury was yesterday at Shearwater, breaking the old record of 27.8 back in 1946. The record at Stanfield, I figured it was going to go down because I was expecting the guaranteed high near 28 degrees, and it got to 29 at the airport. The old record was 24 back in 2005. So that was really an easy record to break. But these records were not just in Halifax. I mean, Greenwood 30 degrees yesterday, breaking a 1914 record of 25.6 degrees. Kejimkujik 29, breaking a 1974 record of 25. Kentville was 30 degrees. It was 25 in Port Hawkesbury. Those were records. 24.7 in Deburs. That breaks a record set back in 2023, but the records there back to 1873. And how far these records go back really just depends on the site, because some stations have either moved around throughout the years or were brought on later than some of the others. But, you know, in some cases, these are records that date back to the 60s, 50s, 40s. In some cases, these are we have records that have been kept since, you know, the 1870s. So certainly very unusually warm in the region yesterday. PEI, I believe, had one of its hottest. I believe they recorded their hottest October day on record yesterday, and in Kujipukak, New Brunswick, they tied. So it was very warm. And I should mention, too, that these are just of the Environment Canada official stations. Of course, we all, you know, I shouldn't say we all, but many of us have a weather station in our backyard, and there's, you know, the Cape Breton Mesonet, and a lot of stations did get close to 31, 32 degrees. But those are considered more unofficial just because they are not maintained and held to similar standards as the Environment Canada network. But bottom line is, it was unseasonably and unusually warm for early October yesterday. It was a bit weird because it was so hot out, but all the trees are starting to change color.
Some of those records are older than me, and Vanessa will tell you that's saying something.
Well, that's like I just mentioned. Some of these records are long-standing records that date back, quite a while. So this is, you know, we've certainly had our fair share, I think, of, you know, we get a few warm days sometimes in October, typically not this warm, for sure.
Allister, what's behind it? Where's this weather coming from?
I mean, it all links back to this ridge of high pressure that, you know, has been so common since the summer. Really, the cause of it is because it's been positioned 2 hours south, off the U.S. East Coast, and there's a lot of warm air that is still present over parts of the southeastern U.S. and, of course, down towards the Gulf states. And when you get this ridge sitting in that location, you're starting to see a more broad circulation along the U.S. eastern seaboard. And when you start to get that southwesterly circulation, it pulls that warmer air up the eastern seaboard and often into our region. And that was somewhat enhanced by what is going to be a sharp cold front that's starting to make its way not just across Canada, but across much of the U.S. And that pressure gradient that sets up between the high and the low really just help to enhance and drive in and concentrate that warm air up the eastern seaboard and into the Maritimes. And worth noting that, in Newfoundland yesterday, it was pretty chilly. Temperatures were generally in the low and mid-teens there, so it wasn't widespread Atlantic-wide. They're a bit warmer today, but it all has to do with that ridge of high pressure that's really just been such a story for the past summer and now into the fall, just in an ideal position off the offshore, pulling in that warm air from the southeastern U.S. and the Gulf states.
Allister, we know that when this cold front moves through, then that usually signals a change in the weather and brings with it hopefully some rain. And there is some rain in the forecast, correct?
Correct. I mean, as much as maybe a lot of us did enjoy the weather yesterday, it was another challenging day for firefighters, right, based on what I've heard, from the Department of Natural Resources. And as you mentioned at the top of the show, the Long Lake wildfire, a hot spot flared up there yesterday. The smoke was visible on satellite yesterday. So this is, the hot weather is not good for these fires, but we do have a cold front moving in. It'll slowly track in throughout the day on Wednesday, and I think we'll first see a chance of showers developing, in the afternoon, but the steadiest rain will be Wednesday evening and then clearing out overnight into Thursday. And it does look like this will be, in general, a widespread 10 to 20 millimeters across the province. There will likely be some areas with some heavier downpours. And within those areas, we could see some localized areas of 20 upwards of 30 or 40 millimeters. I think that's more likely near the Fundy Coast into Cumberland County, but can't be ruled out locally elsewhere in the province. But it would seem right now it's a general 10 to 20 millimeters, which we need more, but we will certainly take any rain. And unfortunately, that's really, in terms of widespread rain, all we're going to be talking about for the rest of the week, because that high pressure ridge, while not quite in the same position 2 hours south, will be setting back up for the end of the week and the upcoming Thanksgiving weekend. Generally quiet weather to talk about through the long weekend and possibly even into next week too.
And that was my next question. What happens on the other side of this latest rainmaker, Allister? Are we going to see a return to seasonal temperatures? Are we still going to be above normal, or what's going on that way?
Well, that's the thing about cold fronts at this time of year. In the summertime, maybe it moderates the temperatures a bit from 30 degrees to 23 or 24, but we are in for a reality check for Thursday. Temperatures, they're moderating today. It's still warm, and Wednesday will be warm, but obviously with the increase in cloud and the rain, we're generally going to be held in the low 20s. But by Thursday, we'll be lucky to reach 11 or 12 degrees in the Halifax area. Most of the province generally in the range of about 9 to 13, 14 degrees. Parts of the Atlantic coast could get close to 14 or 15. So we are falling by, upwards of 10 to 15 degrees compared to yesterday, where we will sit on Thursday. Friday, looking similar, maybe a degree or two warmer for some, but generally low to mid-teens. Finally, we start to see, a bit warmer temperatures moving in for the Thanksgiving weekend, but generally, near where we should be for this time of year. It's not a significant warm up. And I should note too that the nights, Wednesday night into Thursday, but then Thursday night into Friday are also going to be quite chilly, mid, low single digits, unless you're right along parts of the coast. So once again, if you are still maybe keeping a few late season vegetables or flowers, cover them up or bring them in, because certainly looks like we could see a bit of frost later in the week, although not as concerned Wednesday night into Thursday just because it will have the rain and the wind. It will really just depend on how fast those winds ease because they will remain breezy behind that cold front Wednesday night and Thursday.
Allister just took a very quick peek into the Atlantic Basin. Maybe one storm that is brewing down there, but at this point, everything looks pretty good hurricane-wise.
Yep, just that one area that you mentioned, which is given a 90% chance of formation. So expecting Jerry, that's the next name, to likely form at some point over the next few days. But at this point, I don't see it being a concern for our weather. I will certainly keep an eye on it. I know forecasters in the U.S. are watching a coastal system that will develop during the weekend and likely sit somewhere between the Carolinas and possibly Long Island, New York, maybe as close as Cape Cod. But the high-pressure ridge is going to keep that 2 hours south. They're just possibly watching it for, if it's able to sit there, maybe it could develop into a subtropical system or gain some tropical characteristics. But the high-pressure ridge that will be over our region will hold anything that develops 2 hours south. So no immediate concerns in terms of tropical weather for our region, but of course, it's only early October. We should not let our guard down, and we'll certainly keep an eye on it.
So to sum up, Allister, warm temperatures, record breakers. Looks like there's some rain on the way, and then, as you called it, a reality check, or as I call it, hockey-like weather coming up right after that.
Exactly. Yeah, it was record-breaking yesterday. Not as warm today, but still warm, well above seasonal. But welcome rain as we go later Wednesday night, and then temperatures near reality for Thursday and Friday. And I know you're going to kick me off the phone for saying this now, but even some of the models in not Nova Scotia, but in New Brunswick, were showing that maybe there could be a few wet flurries.
Oh no, we don't even. No, we don't talk about that stuff here.
Yeah, I knew you're gonna kick me off now. Time's up, eh?
Allister, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you on Friday.
See you Friday. Thanks, Dan.
That is Allister Aalders, our weather specialist. And funny, I should mention hockey, because the weather's going to change on Thursday. We're going to get back into what should be a traditional fall-like weather, and we know that the Halifax Mooseheads are in the building on Thursday night. They're playing host to Rimouski on October the 9th. And that game goes at 7. So if you want to go and see the Halifax Mooseheads take on the Oceanic down there at Scotiabank Centre, we have a pair of tickets to give away. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. And Vanessa says caller number 5 will take those tickets home. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Go Jays, go. Go Moose, go. It's a sports person's paradise in October, isn't it? When we come back, a new campaign to get people thinking about visiting friends and maybe bringing a bottle of wine. We're back to the break.
Axe.
Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show on a Tuesday as we look towards the middle of October, and we look towards perhaps getting together with some friends and some family, because there's all kinds of things going on, right? There's the NHL season kicking off. The Blue Jays are in the playoffs, and hopefully will advance tonight by sweeping the Yankees out of the ALDS and moving to the ALCS. And there's Thanksgiving, and the list goes on and on and on. Very quickly, congratulations to Renee Petrie, who was the winner of our Mooseheads tickets. Make sure you stay by your radio, because you never know when Vanessa finds something kicking around in that prize drawer, and we can give those away, because we like to see everybody have fun and get down to the Scotiabank Centre and enjoy some really cool hockey action. See, I'm using all these cool words to try and change the temperature, because as much as it was nice yesterday, boy, oh boy, it was it was a little bit sticky. Anyway, this is a pretty cool event that I saw. It was announced last month and is taking place right now. And Wine Growers Canada announcing the launch of Come Over October 2025, bringing a celebrated international campaign to wine lovers across the country. Now, as I mentioned, October is a perfect month to celebrate connections in Canada. It's harvest celebrations, it's Thanksgiving, it's Halloween, of course, the start of the hockey season, the Jays, CFL playoffs, the list goes on, combined with, of course, hopefully some crisp autumn air and, vibrant fall colors. We're getting a pretty good display here this year. And why not combine this with perhaps a beverage or two? And we're very pleased to welcome to the program from Wine Growers Canada. That's Natalie MacLean, award-winning author and, funny enough, a wine enthusiast, Natalie.
Go figure. Hey, Dan, and a Maritimer. I grew up in Lower Sackville, and my parents are from Cape Breton. So, hey, go Mooseheads, go Jays.
Even better, right?
Yes, exactly.
Now, we love our wine here in Nova Scotia, as you're well aware. We have some of the best wines on the planet, I'm going to say. And this kind of an event is designed to not only highlight those, but to get people together and enjoy some of the fruits of the labor of the wine industry here in Nova Scotia.
Absolutely. So Come Over October, it's a new global movement to celebrate how wine, and especially Canadian and Nova Scotia wine, has played a role in, bringing people together for, thousands of years, actually. And so this campaign is all about encouraging us to invite friends and family and neighbors over and maybe have a glass of wine or two, watch a game, or whatever the occasion is. It doesn't have to be around something specifically, but it's about getting together and celebrating each other.
We know that this time of the year, exception of yesterday where it was 30 degrees, but for the most part, this time of the year things cool down, that we get less daylight hours and people aren't outside as much, and we can kind of start to work our way into our dens and not be very social as we head into fall, into winter.
Absolutely. So, we get into the doom scrolling and, I don't know, too much screen time, not enough in real life time. And so, this is about, asking a neighbor or a friend or family member, let's get together, like in real life, and have one of those moments of connection. I mean, it sounds like marketing speak, but really it's about getting back to what we used to do before we had phones and everything else, and just, having those deeper moments of connection.
And if you can enjoy some good wine at the same time, it's a bonus.
Well, heck, that's a good bonus. So it's not about the wine per se, but the wine is kind of a catalyst to say, hey, I've got this great bottle of, Tidal Bay. Why don't you come over at 5 or 6 or whatever, and let's crack it open and let's catch up, especially for the people you haven't seen in a while. Or it's a good excuse to, shout over the fence to a neighbor. Let's get together.
And, of course, support the wine industry at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, wine is the highest value agricultural good we produce in this country. So it is about farming. Some people perceive it as fancied up farming because it has this sort of social image, but really it's about supporting small family-owned farms in the province, across the country. And it adds, more than $11 billion to our economy every year, 45,000 jobs. It has a real economic impact too.
Fancied up farming. I like that term.
Yeah, well, the images of wines on funny verandas and raised pinky fingers, but it's not about that. It's about connecting with people and, sharing a good glass. I mean, it's just, you don't even have to talk about the wine. You can if you want. You will if you come to my house, but it's about connecting.
Natalie, is more information available to our listeners on this?
There certainly is, Dan. Glad you asked. So comeoveroctober.com has all kinds of ideas. So, if you want to turn it into an informal fun wine tasting, there's ideas on how to do that. But there's all kinds of things, after game, pre-game, whatever, like if you want some structure to it. But you don't need that either. But comeoveroctober.com is the website.
Natalie, it's always fun to talk to a Blue Noser, and all the best.
You bet, Dan. Cheers.
That is Natalie MacLean from Wine Growers Canada. We know that it's been a bit of a tough year, right? We know that we've had a pretty dry and fire-filled summer, and I know haven't seen any real data, but I know that wine producers out there are looking and watching their vines very closely. So if we can get out and support them, that probably is going to be good for the economy here in Nova Scotia. We're going to stop. We're going to take another break. When we come back, it's time for the open hour. Lots to discuss out there. I mentioned it off the top of the program today, and I'm very curious to your thoughts on it. We heard on Friday from John Lohr that HRM is now under a planning area by the province. The province is now dictating where things can get built, so they can do away with parking regulations and density and those kind of things. We've talked about provincial government stepping into the way of city council in the past, and I'm curious if your opinion has changed on it. Is it smart for the province to take over some of these big files from city council, as we know sometimes council gets bogged down in the business of it all? That could be something you want to talk about when we open up those lines. The number 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. The open hour after the news.
Facts.
Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. This is the open hour. The lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255 are the numbers. If you want to get on, talk about whatever it is on your mind. Nice to hear in the newscast that fire in the woods on the Chain of Lake trails near Chain of Lakes there was a big deal, and they managed to get it out. So that is a sigh of relief, I would imagine, for many living in that neighborhood. And, of course, our thoughts still going out to those around Lake George. And, of course, now the Long Lake fire is flaring up again. The good news with the Long Lake fire is that DNR still says that they don't think that it's going to expand. It's still under control, so they don't think it's going to threaten anything. However, Lake George continues to burn out of control and grew a little bit yesterday. And with the weather yesterday and into today, didn't help the situation a lot. But as you heard from our weather specialist, Allister Aalders, there is some rain on the way. Is it enough? Not likely, but it isn't going to hurt, right? So let's hope that everybody gets the same or gets some rain, and we can start to put this fire season behind us, because it has been a long summer when it comes to that. Again, this is the open hour, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. You can talk about whatever it is on your mind. That's the beauty of these open hours. It's there are no holds barred, as the saying goes. You might want to talk about the Blue Jays as they get ready to try and sweep the Yankees out of the playoffs tonight. I mentioned Connor McDavid off the top of the broadcast this morning, and when I heard about him signing a contract extension with the Edmonton Oilers yesterday, just as my jadedness about professional sports was getting to a peak, we get some good news. And $12.5 million is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. But he could have signed for 17 or 18 million and didn't take a pay raise at all for the next 2 years, telling his general manager, Stan Bowman, to use that money to try and improve his team. You hear it a lot from athletes that they play for the crest on the front of the sweater and not for the name on the back. But with some of the contracts that we've seen in the NHL this season and last, you start to think that maybe thinking gets reversed a little bit. But the best hockey player in the world, yeah, I said it, best hockey player in the world, Connor McDavid, could have signed a contract for whatever he wanted, and he didn't take a raise. Says something about it, doesn't it? 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Or, of course, the big news on Friday, just starting to kind of filter through, was John Lohr putting HRM under a new interim planning area, which means new minimum planning requirements would take effect He says there's a critical need for housing in Halifax. He said the province is taking action to unlock development in the municipality while work on the regional plan continues. These orders will give effect to the minimum planning requirement regulations for housing supply and will allow planning and development to begin in key suburban areas targeted for growth. That's politicians speak for, we're going to put these things here and we're going to push this stuff forward because we need to build housing. It would remove barriers to development and will require the municipality to permit residential uses in most zones, right? Now, it also changes, this is where I think the rubber hits the road. It changes the calculation on density, puts clauses on height restrictions, and removes on-site parking requirements for residential buildings within these urban service areas. So by my reading into this legislation, the province can approve a development in a neighborhood that HRM may not have. And if you listen to our interview with Liberal leader Derek Mombourquette earlier in the show, there's not a lot of provisions in there for public consultation. So is there a potential now for the province to say, well, we're putting this 6-story building on this neighborhood, even if it's just residential housing? And you don't have a whole lot to say about it. But then who do you go to? Your MLA? Well, if it's in HRM, or if it's on the peninsula here in Halifax, your MLA is an NDP. So how does that work? These are the problems I have with the province digging into municipal matters. Do you feel the same? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Ed to the show. Ed, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. And I hope Todd's medical treatment is going well for him.
Well, I've reached out to him on the weekend, and he was giving me the gears about the Yankees, so he must be feeling okay.
Glad to hear that. Anyway, why I'm calling is I think democracy in North America, not just from the inside, not just from the outside, but from the inside, is under attack. And I mean more specifically also here in Nova Scotia.
Okay.
So, our premier seems to have some dictatorial tendencies here. His disrespect for the legislature and the legislative process, is trying to put Andy Fillmore in with super mayoral powers, all indicate someone that's wants more control over us than maybe we should be giving them. And why I say with the super mayoral powers as well, it's easier to keep one person in line than 17, I think. So, especially with the legislature, I've never seen someone in authority and power disrespect our legislature that much. And I also think that the backbenchers shouldn't just be bench warmers, but they should have a chance to vote their conscience at least 3 or 4 times a year, even if it's against their party.
Right, and I agree with that. And I understand how party politics works. When you're government, you need everybody kind of in line to move your agenda forward. But on big and contentious bills, I think you're right. I think that it should be a free vote.
And the thing, well, at least 3 or 4 times a year. I understand the party process too, and there has to be some consistency. But it doesn't have to be this complete authoritarian power that is becoming more and more in vogue right across all our governments, I think. I voted PC my entire life, but while Mr. Houston is premier, I won't be voting that way again, and I hope a lot of people that voted PC this last time will relook at their vote in the next election.
Ed, I appreciate the call, sir.
Thank you.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. With regards to the legislature, an 8-day session is it's almost embarrassing. It's, you know, I was home. I was in Ontario last week when I was away, and we were talking about this amongst friends and family, and I said, yeah, our session's probably going to end. And I didn't think it was going to end in 8 days. I thought it might go 10 or 12. But they're kind of like, what? Really? It's almost embarrassing. And what, to Ed's point, and I understand that there's business that the premier has to do outside of Nova Scotia, particularly in today's world, with the ongoing threat from the United States with tariffs and those kind of things. I understand that. But is it too far, or is it out of the realm of possibility to think that the premier, the boss, knew that the session was going to be 8 days long or somewhere around there, yet still traveled to Ottawa when the House was in session for a couple of days to meet with the Prime Minister and with the Environment Minister? Now, I get it. He's pushing his Wind East or Wind West project, but when you know you're only going to be on the floor for 8 days, could that have not waited? It comes across to me as a bit weird. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. The open hour continues right after the break. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrands. The lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We have lots of lines open if you want to get on, talk about whatever it is on your mind. We've been having a bit of a discussion over the news last week that HRM is now essentially, when it comes to building, is under the control of the provincial government. And we've talked about government control before, and it was born out of the discussion over the bike lanes on Morris Street. And I know many of you called and wrote, and I appreciate it when you do that, that you thought it was a good idea for the premier to take control of that situation because City Council wasn't listening to the will of the people. That was the consensus of the calls that we took on it. But this one, I think, is different. This one, I think, is a little bit more than that. And I laid out some of the reasons before the break. There's, and maybe I'm missing it. Maybe there are mechanisms in place, but I don't see them, and I don't think they will be as readily available. But if John Lohr or the by extension the premier makes a decision on putting a development in a neighborhood where the neighborhood doesn't want it, then what is the recourse for the neighbors? Where do they go? Who do they talk to? We know that we've seen many different instances of it, right? We've seen many different occasions where people have gone to public meetings and rallied in front of the legislature or in front of City Hall about buildings and density and heights and traffic and traffic flow and parking and all those things. So if the City Council is taken out of that equation, then how do you voice your opposition to it? Because if you wait for 4 years, it's going to be too late. And if you live in a riding that isn't or doesn't have a PC representative in the legislature, then can you raise your concern? That's my problem with this. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Might be something you want to talk about. Chris is here. Chris, how are you?
Hey, what's going on, Dan?
What's on your mind, sir?
Good to talk to you, buddy. My girlfriend and I, we listen to you all the time, and I'd like to talk about the Blue Jays.
Sure.
They were kind of a dark horse. And people, they think they're going to, the Yankees are going to beat them and everybody else. But, they should just keep going with Gosman and that new guy, Dravich. Those guys, they're like Cy Young winners.
Right.
And, put Scherzer and all those other guys in the pen.
Yeah, well, we'll see what Bieber's got the ball tonight, so we'll see how he does.
He's good.
Okay.
He's good. The thing is, what's going to happen is if the Yankees, I hope that they sweep them.
Right, me too.
I'm tired of all that stuff and everything. Geez, back in the day, I used to phone in and talk, to the biggest Expos fan of all time.
Yeah.
Howe, Mr. Howe.
Absolutely.
Rick. Oh, God, he always wore his Expos hat and his pride on his sleeve. He was such a nice guy.
Right.
I remember, I'll tell you a funny story. It won't take long, I
Sure.
promise. I know lots of other callers. But one day I called up. I was pretty upset, and I swore. I dropped an F-bomb. And Rick said to me, well, he didn't hang up on me. He didn't cut me off. He said, please do not do that anymore.
Right.
And I promised. I said, he's such a nice guy.
Yep. For sure.
I loved him. Yeah, and you're doing a hell of a job too, Don.
Appreciate it, Chris.
You're doing good, buddy.
I appreciate it. Talk to you soon, all right?
Go,
Thanks. Go Jays, go. Absolutely.
Jays.
Absolutely.
Go Jays.
Thanks for the call, Chris. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. I can tell you the consensus with the Blue Jays at the very beginning of the season, if you scroll back the tape all the way to the beginning of the season, was that they weren't going to even challenge for a playoff spot. It was going to be the Red Sox and the Yankees and even Baltimore. And maybe even Tampa. They could have finished last in the American League East. But they proved everybody wrong. They went on that big tear. Remember that big winning streak that they went on and won the home field advantage during the regular season with the Yankees, and that is why when we ended the season on that downswing, the Jays did, that the Yankees ended up in the wild card because of their regular season play. Now, do the Jays miss Bo Bichette? 100%. But they really have rallied around that logo, I'll tell you. And I think tonight will be a test. With the Yankees back against bring out the sports cliches, right? They're going to give 110%. They're a really good team over there in that locker room. I know. I'm having a little bit of fun with it. But with the Yankees facing elimination at home at Yankee Stadium, if the Blue Jays were able to find a way to win tonight, that is going to play huge moving forward into the American League Championship Series. But one game at a time, right? Again, there's another cliche. So they're going to use their God-given talent to try. And I'll stop now. But and very quickly, just in case you're looking for a way to watch all this stuff tonight, we'll have the game on here on the radio station, 95.7 at 9 o'clock tonight. And you can listen to it its entirety. And I said it off the beginning of the show that it is and maybe I'm being a baseball purist, but it really is the way I think that baseball is the best way to consume it, is to listen to it on the radio. I can tell you, I had worked the Moose game after game 2, and I was driving home, and I was listening to Ben on the call, and when Guerrero hit that home run, I was yelling and screaming in the cab of my truck. So it really is a very cool way to catch a baseball game. Again, that game will be here live. Don't forget, we are unable to stream baseball games at the radio station. It's a Major League Baseball rule. Has been for a number of years. So if you want to catch it on the radio, you'll have to have a radio, an old school radio, to listen to it. And that is by rule of Major League Baseball. They have their own streaming service, so we're unable to do that. But you can catch all of the action live right here. Couple of emails to read very quickly before we take the break. This one from Rob. It says, I've never agreed with the way this city is handling bike lanes, for example. But he writes, I have no desire for the province to take control over HRM. Citizens of HRM deserve to be in control of what happens in their municipality and have the elected people to make those decisions. If we disagree with those people, there are mechanisms for dealing with that. If we don't like the structure of council, I'm certainly open to changes. But the Premier stepping in and declaring himself emperor over all housing decisions in the municipality is absolutely unacceptable. This email writes on the legislature's length. This writer writes, I should say, it's absolutely criminal that the Nova Scotia Legislature only sat for 8 days in 2025, and even more scandalous that the Premier missed 2 of those days. It's not democracy is the way it was designed and we deserve. Premier Houston's not king, and Nova Scotians should be outraged. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Lots of lines for you if you want to join the conversation. The open hour continues after the news. Welcome back. The open hour continues. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Lots of open lines for you if you want to get in on the conversation. There's lots to talk about. We can talk about the business with the province. We can talk about Connor McDavid. We can talk about the Blue Jays. We can talk about something we talked about yesterday, something we haven't raised. That's the beauty of an open hour. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. 8255. To the phones, we welcome Kathy to the show. Kathy, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, just talking about the housing intervention through the province.
Right.
I'm wondering if you or anyone out there knows who makes the selection of locations for all of the housing that's been going up. From Almond Street to Yonge, around Gottingen, there's been at least 7 buildings in the last number of years, plus a new school, and there's 3 more buildings slotted to be open. So I had called the city planning office and the planner and said, when is there any relief for this neighborhood that has seen massive construction over the last at least 4 years? Because it's, it really is difficult for people to live listening to that constant heavy equipment and jackhammering. And it's just, beyond. And I said, why is it this area within 3 blocks? And he said it's a dense area that will continue to be built and grown because it's on a bus route. But, the people around here that are selling their homes and taking a huge loss, what about them? Like, there's no mechanism for consultation or communication. I called our counselor and wanted to talk to her about it, and she didn't respond or return my call. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's better for the province to get involved because the communication with City Hall is zero. And, we've got this huge school outside of our building, which is 2.5 years behind schedule.
Right.
And there's, nobody accountable for it, not to mention, the money, the tax dollars that's going into it. Anyway, it might not be a bad thing for the province to, to take the reins and, get this thing open maybe to more communication and consultation with the community.
Kathy, what is the construction noise like? You said you're right by the school that they're building there. Does it stop at night? How does it work?
Well, it goes from sometimes 6:30. It's supposed to be 7 until 8 p.m. And it used to be Monday to Friday. Now it's Monday through Saturday because they're so behind. They're speeding things up, and they've got massive crews now that just like an anthill looking out at it, but. There's the jackhammering. That's mostly stopped, but that went on for years because we live on a granite peninsula.
Yes.
And the heavy equipment that's just constantly moving and just the roar of construction that you have one day and it's Sunday and you think, okay, I get to, not be woken up at 6:30. So, yeah, it's not pleasant, that's for sure. And it's been, well over 4 years.
Kathy, appreciate your call.
Okay, thanks.
Have a great day. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Off the top of the show, I mentioned today that Halifax Council is meeting, and they're underway. And one of the things on the agenda this time around is a motion from Catherine Morse to have city staff take a look at creating a building mitigation fund. The intent is for businesses that are impacted by this kind of construction, right? We and I use the convention center as an example of that, and lots of businesses, lots of restaurants, lots of pubs, lots of the people that were operating businesses, the tea house down there when that was being done, were complaining, and rightfully so, that their business was impacted because of that construction, right? Closed streets and sidewalks and no parking, and the list goes on, and that they at that time had asked for compensation. Now, I don't think that happened. And now City Council is debating it again. It makes me wonder, with our last caller, Kathy, if this is something that needs to be built into these development agreements. And to answer her question, I think it's up to the developer where these buildings go and the availability of the property for the footprint of the building. Now, Council, up until Friday, had the say on it, right? They'd bring a development to HRM Council, and there'd be a big, one of those PowerPoints, and then Council would ask their ideas, and then they would have a public consultation, and then they would do their thing, and then the development agreement would be made, and the permits issued, and then the work would begin, right? But what happens now? I don't know how it works now. And but it makes you wonder about the neighbors in the area, right? We hear an awful lot of opposition, and I hear it a lot when something is proposed for a neighborhood or for an area, and the neighbors push back, and then I get they're just being NIMBYs. They just don't want this thing built in their backyard. But Kathy raises a really interesting point, right? Kathy said that, it starts at 6:30 in the morning and goes until 8 o'clock at night. And now 6 days a week. So if you're working, you get an hour of that when you're getting ready to go to work. You go to work, you come back, and you deal with that from, 6 o'clock until 8. So it's, 3 hours. But if you're not, and you're retired, or you work from home, or something along those lines, then I'd be frustrated, wouldn't you? I don't know what the answer is, because, it's obvious that construction needs to happen. We have a housing crisis here. But that would be frustrating. They did some work on a street around my neighborhood this summer, and now my hours are different than most. But it was maddening. When you are just laying down to have a nap, or you've got a young child, or your kids get back from school, is it 2:30 or 3 o'clock, and then you have to deal with that kind of noise right up until the kids go to bed. Difficult to get out there and enjoy if you have a patio, your deck, or a backyard. It's something I think gets lost in this, and I think, going back to our original conversation, that neighbors are going to have a more difficult time now if this continues to do that. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Email from Lee and reads as follows. It says the city is using 10% as a starting point for property tax increases. We know it won't be that high, but the rate will likely go up. The first thing they can do with the province's approval is to gradually remove the tax cap on $1 million assessed properties. Why are some of these places valued well in excess of $1.5 million, paying taxes at $700K? Check on Viewpoint, where taxes are paid, listed easily confirms examples of this. Lee writes, it makes no sense to subsidize millionaires. Middle class cannot afford anymore. And that was from Lee. And this one comes to us from Joyce in reference to our conversation yesterday that we had during Councillors on the Hot Seat when former councillor and Dartmouth Mayor Gloria McCluskey called. Joyce writes, Gloria's not wrong. Bike enthusiasts would donate in their own name. Unless you're part of the coalition, you wouldn't know their names. That was in reference to conflicts of interest and donations. And then she writes, hey, Dan, Sidney Crosby took a long-term contract way below market years ago to leave room for others. He absolutely did. What, $8.7 million a year? And he's been paid that most of his career. He's got a thing for 87, right? It's just number. But and this is in reference to the contract signed yesterday, or contract extension signed yesterday by Connor McDavid, who is the consensus best player in the planet. Took a contract well below market value at $12.5 million. It's still a lot of money, but $12.5 million, and told his general manager that that extra money on the table can be used to improve the team around him. It's a rare example, I think. Sidney Crosby's a rare example, and I think that Connor McDavid is a rare example of playing for the logo on the front of your sweater rather than for the name on the back. Professional athletes tend to play to get paid. And we've seen it in the National Hockey League, we've seen it in the National Football League, and we've seen it in the NBA, we've seen it in professional soccer, we've seen it in baseball, we've seen it in all professional sports. And it's refreshing, to say the least, to see somebody of the caliber of a Connor McDavid take or not even get a raise. He just took the same salary that he was being paid for 2 more years after this year, and giving Edmonton a chance to try and put some more parts in there. In the salary cap world, the more money you spend on a single player, the less that you can spend on the rest of the team. Going to stop, take a break. Lines are wide open, everybody. If you want to join the conversation, here's your opportunity. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. The open hour continues after the break.
Axe.
Welcome back. The open hour continues right to the top of the hour. The telephone number is 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's go right to the phones and welcome Mike to the show. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. What's on your mind?
Just wanted to add a little bit to what you've spoken to about the construction and that last caller.
Sure.
Construction is great, and I think we need progress. But I think whoever's planning this construction needs to think a bit about the traffic disruptions over some of the other aspects that they're looking at.
Been a long time frustration for me, and absolutely frustrating.
Yeah, for people to get to and from work or get to and from appointments, it's horrendous.
Yep.
It's just crazy. You put Dutch Village Road, case in point.
Right.
People have to drive 3 or 4 clicks out of their way to get home.
And it puts more vehicles onto the Bedford Highway and onto the 102.
It just creates all kinds of problems exponentially everywhere else.
Absolutely does, Mike.
Yeah, that's all I want to do is just say that we have traffic frustrations along with construction woes as well.
I hear you, Mike. Have a good day, sir.
You too. Thank you.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I think several times on this program I have lamented traffic congestion based out of construction, and I don't think anybody's going to argue. And Mike was very eloquent in the way that he said it, that we need construction to fix things because our infrastructure is in a bad state of repair, right? But it's 2025, soon to be 2026. There has to be a better system or a better way to get these construction contracts out so that you're not plugging up 3 out of the 5 ways to get off the peninsula during the construction season, right? This summer, there was, as Mike mentioned, Dutch Village Road. They were resurfacing Bayview Hill. They were doing some work on the Bedford Highway at Flamingo. How many cars did that drive onto the 102? And what does that do to traffic congestion and collisions on that highway? You'd think there would be a way that we could dole out contracts, or we could award work that you get A done before B begins or B before C begins. I get it. That's probably utopian thinking, but it's almost 2026. You'd think we'd be able to figure that out, right? Let's welcome Mike to the program. Mike, how are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, I was just thinking with all the building going on in Halifax, too. I agree. It seems as though with the province taking it over, maybe that's to speed things up or to get things moving forward quicker. But I really think at the end of the day, what we've got going on here is with the immigration, coming so fast and quick, and I don't really see any added jobs. The only jobs I see in Halifax that are booming are the buildings and buildings. So if you're selling cement, if you're in the covered building business, whatever, I guess you're going to be booming for now. But eventually, when all the people are relocated here, I don't know what are they going to be doing, because I don't see no factories where people are getting good jobs or where they're moving on. I see a lot of donut shops and this kind of thing with a lot of new people working, but that you can't make a living at that kind of stuff in the long run.
Right.
I think what you're going to end up with is a lot of buildings that are either going to be abandoned, or they're going to have to drop the price drastically on them, or it could end up looking like the Bronx in New York. We had all these buildings sitting there with the curtains blown out the window, nobody living in them, because how are people going to live there? Where are they going to work? What are they going to do?
Fair point, Mike.
That's what I see.
Have a good one, sir.
Thank you.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We know that the Premier has that ambitious goal, right? And to grow the province's population. And I get it. It's years down the road, but we're going to see a percent increase in immigration. And what gets lost in that conversation is people automatically assume that by immigration, it's people coming from overseas and from offshore. And while that is a component of it, we're also seeing immigration with people coming from across Canada. I've got 2 neighbors in my building that have moved here in the last 6 months, and they are immigrants, but they're not from away. They are from, one of them's from Manitoba and another one's from British Columbia. People are moving here because up until the last couple of years, it's been a cheap place to live. Not so much anymore. I saw a stat when I was away, folks, that Halifax is the 3rd most expensive city in Canada to live in, behind Vancouver and Toronto. And if that continues, it's not too much of a stretch to think that people are going to start moving away because they just can't afford to live here. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Nicole, how are you today?
I'm well, Dan. How are you?
Good. You get the last word. What's on your mind?
Oh, beautiful. Well, just to piggyback on what you just said about people moving from other parts of Canada,
right.
I lived in Montreal for about 6 years and came back here in 2021 and saw Nova Scotia very differently once I came back. It's not the place that I left, and maybe it was just my perspective that changed, but I noticed an immediate 25% increase across the board in my cost of living when I
100%.
came back here.
Yep, for sure.
It was crazy. But I wanted to I was so happy to hear Gloria call in yesterday and just bring up the conflict of interest. And it was the way she was phrasing the question. And I think what she was pointing at is she was trying to, I can't speak for her, but what I was hearing was that she was trying to point to how independent counsel is actually acting in opposition perhaps to HRM administration. And I think it would be really interesting to either hear from HRM administration or HRM Legal and Legislative Services to really understand the role of Mr. Traves in council.
Sure.
Because when I went back and listened to the responses again from the councillors to my initial question, what struck me is that they said that council is a creature of statute, but yet they're relying on advice from Mr. Traves that's based on a BC precedent that's not been tested in the Nova Scotia courts to say no, campaign contributions are not a conflict of interest, instead of actually reading the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, which is the statute in Nova Scotia. So that to me on its face is a conflict. And the fact that council is relying solely on his word and not the statute is a little concerning. Because again, if you're relying on a precedent, you're kind of gambling with whether or not that's actually going to work. And it's an interesting time right now because also it's almost impossible to unseat an elected official in anywhere, pretty much in any level of government.
Oh, I don't think it's even possible at all, is it?
It is. So they can either resign,
right,
or their seat can be vacated if they are found in conflict.
Okay.
And you can be found in conflict if something is brought through the judicial system, either by the Attorney General of the province or by any elector of the province. So any citizen can file against a sitting councillor if there's a conflict of interest. And so that's why I found it really interesting that Mr. Traves unequivocally said no conflict when the statute says otherwise, and he's using a precedent that's not rooted in Nova Scotia. If I'm a councillor, I'm seeking independent legal counsel to make sure that I'm not in violation of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act and can be potentially have my seat vacated based on narrow legal advice. And that's why I'm really interested to understand his role in council. Is he there to advise the CAO who's sitting there? Is he there to advise council? Do you know?
Well, I mean, just from watching council, they tend to refer to the city solicitor on matters of procedure a lot, right? Like, what's the procedure for this? This is how we do that. And I think I said yesterday after your call, it's. And maybe it's and again, I'm not a lawyer, so but if I reached out to the legal counsel, let's use the radio station for example, and I said, can I do this, legal counsel? And they said yes, then I would just carry on with my job, right? And I wonder if that's what counsel would do.
Well, yes, and they should be, but in that position, Mr. Traves should be citing, from what I can tell, the statute and not an extra provincial precedent.
Fair.
That's where I'm muddy on it, right? And I think that this is where, when we look at our government and we look at kind of how off the rails it is right now, I'm like, are we looking at people that just haven't been trained properly? Do they not understand their jurisdiction? Are we dealing with levels of corruption that we can't see? I have no idea. It feels like it's just like this poly crisis that we're in right now when it comes to the government. It's a mash of things. But I'm struck that he can use a BC precedent and say unequivocally no conflict of interest when it hasn't been tested in Nova Scotia courts. And we have the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act that says otherwise. And to be honest, the precedent that he's used, I've looked into it, had to do with something in the township of Langley. And the BC Community Charter is very different than the Nova Scotia MGA and HRM Charter. So we're not even comparing apples to apples on it. So I'm just going to keep pushing back on this a little bit because there's something there that doesn't make sense. And if HRM wants to come in and clarify it, that would be great because I think that would put this to bed.
Nicole, appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. All you need to know that number is we're going to take a break for the news. On the other side of it, it's time for Science Files. Dr. Rob Thacker is here. He's here to answer your science questions. If you have a space question, if you have a nugget of scientific fact that you'd like to flesh out with the good doctor, here's your opportunity. Again, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Science Files after the news.
Facts.
It's Tuesday, it's after the news at noon, and that means the tradition here, anyway, is that it's time for Science Files. If you have a science-related question, here's an opportunity to get some answers. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-802-801. My mistake, 801-825. I only say that number 50,000 times a day, and you'd think I'd get it right, so... Anyway, Dr. Rob's laughing at me. That's that voice, that laughter you hear is Dr. Rob Thacker, of course, our good friend and scientist from St. Mary's University. Dr. Rob, welcome back to the studio.
I love when people say a real live scientist because I don't want to do
live
that.
one.
I could be a zombie scientist.
Do you play one on TV?
I don't play one on TV because I actually am.
See, there you go. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Before we get into all of the science news of the week and so on and so forth, Dr. Rob, I don't know if you were enjoying yesterday's temperatures. And last night's above seasonal night, but I managed to get outside and I was on my deck and I saw two things happen. One, I saw that big, bright, beautiful moon last night.
Sure.
Holy smokes! Now that's the harvest moon, correct? Is that the vernacular for it?
So sure. In what contest?
Well, in the old school, that the farmers used to say that's harvest moon, time to pull the crops in because it's October.
I see from that perspective. Yeah.
But it's what is it? Is it based purely on location of the moon to the Earth? That when it gets that big and bright and beautiful, is that responsible for all of that?
Well, there is there's a whole bunch of things to think about. I mean, harvest moons traditionally, I mean, you're talking about something when you're associating it naturally with crops.
Right.
Right. But the thing I like to point out about the full moon is there's a tendency for people to feel that it's really, really huge when it's close to the horizon, and then it's small when it gets up into the sky. And so if you're seeing it when it's close to the horizon, that's a beautiful little optical illusion, right? And the optical illusion is that when it's close to the horizon and you're looking at it, you actually have other references, right? And so you can kind of gauge its size from those other references.
Really?
Whereas when it's high up in the sky, there's nothing around it, and it tends to feel quite small. Right. And so you can test this. You can literally set up a mirror so you reflect it when it's high in the sky and put it down on the horizon, basically, so you can see it. And it actually works pretty well.
So, like, to the untrained eye,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll put my hand up as being untrained, it looks like the width of that moon when it comes up, when it comes above the buildings, is much wider than it is when it's.
It does look like that. Yep.
So that's an optical illusion.
That's an optical illusion. Yep.
I never knew. See,
seriously. I mean, because you have a frame of reference as it comes up, your brain will process it to be a little bit larger than it actually is. And when it's high up in the middle of the sky and it's the only thing, it feels small because there's nothing else around it.
Wild.
Yeah.
Now, the brightness of that moon and its fullness, that obviously has to do with the orbit of the moon and its location, its relation to the Earth, correct?
Yeah, I mean, but there's not a huge amount of difference. I mean, we debated this with supermoons and things like that.
Right.
So you're only looking at like 10, 14% difference in the overall size and so on. So it's not a huge difference. In fact, this is the thing with discussions of things like supermoons and so on, that the astronomers are like, okay, yeah, right. But it's just not a thing for us, right? Because the moon is always on this slightly elliptical orbit that's taking it closer and farther away and so on. And so that's happening all the time, has a very small impact on the tides and things like that, not particularly significant at the end of the day. And so it's kind of, I hate to sort of like be like the person pouring the water on the fire.
You're ruining all my illusions, Dr. Rob. Next, you're going to tell me it's not made of cream cheese.
But so when when journalists call about the supermoon, I tend to go, oh, yeah, I can talk about it, but it's not something that I'm getting particularly excited about.
Now, you mentioned its effect on tides, and that's documented. It's not a huge effect, but that's documented, and that's based on gravitational pull?
That's right. And so it's two things you got to really think about with tides. It's the alignment and position, right? And so when the moon is new, and so it's basically kind of in front of the sun, then the sun and the moon are working together, right? But then if you flip it around on the other side, they're kind of also working opposite one another, but they're putting more of a tidal force on the Earth itself, right? So they kind of add up then. So you have the sort of like new moon tides, the full moon tides, those are both really high tides, generally speaking, right? Now, if you make the moon just a little bit closer, it will have a tiny effect, but compared to the difference between, say, quarter moon tides versus full moon tides and so on, that's going to be much more significant.
And the second part of this question, you and I have debated in the past, and this comes to me from experience and from conversations with law enforcement and with emergency medical technicians and with nurses and doctors, that humans do kind of crazy stuff when the full moon is out there, and you and I...
Because humans are being told that they do crazy stuff when there's a full moon.
So... just to put it on the record, no scientific backing to that, but it's anecdotally people tell me these stories.
So here's the thing. There are some studies that show there is an increase and so on. I'm not going to say there isn't. It's just a question of what is actually causing that, right? And so most people, I think, come to the conclusion that actually this is a sociological issue far more than it is an actual physical issue, right? It's not a placebo in this case, because there is a sociological thing going on, right?
Right.
So people are responding to a stimulus, right? But the stimulus is people do crazy things. Let's be crazy. It's a full moon, right? And so that is unfortunately really, really difficult to break out of the data.
And no werewolves.
Well, I mean.
We're going off the rails already, Dr. Rob. We're only 13 minutes in, right? Anyway, the second phenomenon I saw last night, and I'm dropping this on him with any prior knowledge, so I apologize to you, Dr. Rob, for this, but it's something I described it earlier today, and I see it every year, usually around October. And I saw it last night, mostly because I was outside on the deck enjoying that beautiful warm temperatures and maybe even a glass of Nova Scotia wine. But there were thousands, and I'm not over-exaggerating, thousands of crows that were flying from down the province towards the mount. And I know that back in the day, Rick Howe used to talk to somebody who did a book or a study or a documentary on this, that they believe that this has to do with a crow keeper from the old days, and these are descendants of the crows, and they keep coming. But like, I'm not exaggerating. There were thousands of crows last night.
So this is truly an incredible Halifax phenomenon, right? But there are other. Antigonish also has a similar situation.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of crows there that flock and so on a regular daily basis. So here, believe it or not, I actually live under one of the pathways for the crows.
It's insane.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, it's quite incredible. I think there may actually be another area that they go to that's actually in the southern area, a little bit further away. But I see this regularly as well, right? And it's quite incredible, right, to see this daily migration every day.
So is it a migration? I mean, obviously we're speculating, but is it a migration? Is it a circuit? Like to get to that many birds in the...
Well, okay, I don't know. And if someone has studied this, I would really love to talk to that person.
Yeah, no doubt.
But no, what I see is because we're on a sort of like direct path for anything coming from, I don't know, around... Point Pleasant and things like that. Any crows coming up from there, they're going to be flying over our house to get to the mount, right? And so we see pretty like clockwork, half an hour before the sun goes down. I wouldn't say I've ever seen thousands of crows, but I've certainly seen hundreds of crows.
No, there was, and I know it's easy to over exaggerate, and it's almost impossible to sit there with a pencil and a paper and count.
Yeah.
But there were thousands of crows last night, and I always seems that at this time of the year, and I don't know if it's a cycle of the bird or whatever, that there's just more in the fall than I see throughout the rest of the year.
That's possible. I mean, when it's most noticeable is when you have a beautiful sunset, because then you're looking at the sunset anyway. Right. And then you'll see them. But the other place that I've seen is around the Dingle. Right, there is what appears to be a roost there as well. We've certainly gone down and done sunrise pictures there, and I've seen like a lot of crows making an absolute racket.
Yes,
absolute racket. But there does seem to be another sort of roost there as well.
It's a very Halifax thing, and it's pretty cool to see. It's kind of awe-inspiring that many animals know to get to that spot at that certain time of the day, and they're able to fly and not fly into each other.
Here's the really amazing thing about it, because when they're away from that spot, they're actually really strongly territorial.
Yes, very.
Right?
Yes.
Strongly territorial. So it's curious. I'm really interested to know how they have that social pattern that they'll just go up there and they're all flocked together up there.
If somebody knows, or if I've read a book or something on it, let us know. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We'd love to get to the bottom of that mystery. We're going to stop and take our first break here on Science Files. We'll get to the phones, I promise. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We're back in minutes. Now that I got all my questions answered, it's time for you to get your science questions answered. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's go to the phones. We welcome Jeff to the show. Jeff, how are you?
Very good. Yourself?
Good. Your question for Dr. Rob, please.
Two questions, actually. First one, on cell phones, the 5G towers. The ones like, I don't know if you travel that area, but like in Coldbrook, where it looks like you could almost throw a rock at the tower. But inevitably, you almost always lose signal when you're coming by that tower. Just wondering, do you know if they have like an umbrella effect that if you're too close, you get under the signal?
So that's, I wouldn't have expected that. What I would possibly sort of like wonder about is whether there's a switchover depending upon how close you are. But if you were really close, I would have thought you would have gone through that already. Right. So
yeah,
So I'm not.
I noticed they seem to be building them further back from the highway. Like the newer ones seem to be further back from the highway, and
Well, okay, interesting. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't have thought of an obvious reason why that would actually happen.
In my case, this is the only way I get there to listen to the radio station. I run from Yarmouth to Dartmouth, so there's lots of holes in that in the service area.
So it's funny you should say that. I mean, I do actually have a really interesting little story, which is related. That I was in Scotland over the summer for my holiday, and I was with someone. And they said that in the particular town they lived in Scotland, they could only get a high-speed internet by driving up to the cell tower.
Okay.
So they didn't have high enough speed at home, so they would literally, if they needed to transfer a file, they would drive over to the cell tower.
Anyway, Jeff, you said you had a second question?
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen the video from the EV car fire in New Minas over the weekend, but the flames on the car were like 3 to 4 feet above the car. Are those batteries prone to explode, or are they just the chemical reaction just makes them burn?
So
there's a lot of people with other cars around that stayed well away that didn't go get their cars and move them, kind of thing.
Yeah, so there are going to be some batteries because of the organic solvents that are used in them that do have a fire risk. Slowly, people are trying to move away from the more dangerous ones, right? And so we've seen that with computers, for example, that we had the stories a few years ago of laptop batteries just literally catching fire on flights. And so it's exactly the same issue, right? It's you have these organic solvents that are in the lithium-ion batteries that have a certain possibility, a very low one, admittedly, of actually catching fire if they're damaged in one way or another. And it is more a case of them being damaged most of the time for EVs as well, although they can actually ignite under certain circumstances, but rarely, because they do have to pass a lot of safety checks as well. So, but the hope in the long run is that we'll slowly move away from these particular types of technologies to solid-state batteries, which really have a very low probability of doing anything like that. In fact, they can't really do anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was just curious whether they have potential, once they were that much on fire, whether there was a potential of an explosion as well. But, okay, thank you.
All right, Jeff, appreciate it.
Actually, no, Jeff is right to bring that up. So, I mean, you can certainly have what I will call a flare-up of a cell, right? So anyone who's seen, like, there are movies of battery recycling plants where people are processing all the batteries coming in, they have a conveyor belt, and suddenly one of them on the conveyor belt starts suddenly lighting up and burning, right? So that kind of thing happens. There's nothing, like, really sort of like, I don't think it's reasonable to think they're going to explode in a big way. It's not that kind of situation, right? There's nothing that's oxidizable enough to actually make it explode like that, right? But certainly there's stuff that will burn at a pretty regular pace for sure.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. An email question, Dr. Rob. It comes to us from Mark. It reads, Rob, we know Andromeda is going to engulf the Milky Way eventually. Will this make our night sky brighter? Also, what will happen to the orbit of the smaller local group galaxies like the Triangulum Galaxy? Could it be pulled into this super galaxy with ours in Andromeda? Thanks.
So this is someone who really knows their astronomy. Okay, so let me explain the situation. So the biggest sort of like large galaxy in our local group of galaxies is the Andromeda Galaxy. And so we're roughly the same size. It's actually quite difficult to figure out which one is bigger and smaller. We think actually the Milky Way might possibly be slightly bigger after thinking Andromeda was bigger for a long time. But the point is, we're pretty sure on the basis of how the two of them are moving that they're actually going to collide with one another in several billion years, right? Now, the challenge with actually knowing what's going to happen is that these systems are incredibly big. We don't know the positions of everything within them. And so although I have literally done simulations of this process, I can't tell you in explicit detail where the sun, for example, will end up. And it's kind of a little bit ironic because about the time this is going to happen, the sun is going to be turning into a red giant star anyway, right? But in terms of what will happen to all of the smaller satellite galaxies, because we actually have all of these other galaxies around us, we're actually merging with them all of the time, so-called galactic cannibalism, which is an interesting name for it. But those things, they will carry on orbiting around the new system, but some of them are inevitably going to get wrapped up in the collision as well, right? So it's just a question of where is the particular system, what is the orbital dynamics of the Milky Way and Andromeda, and that will determine where they end up at the end of the day. And so there's not really an easy way. I think as a rule of thumb, anything that's farther out, it's more likely to survive. Anything that's closer in is more likely to be wrapped up in all of the creation of beautiful tidal tails that will happen.
Do we have a time frame when this is going to happen?
Yeah, 4 to 5 billion years.
No, right. So like not next week.
The funny thing is, even if it was happening next week, it's still going to take over 1 billion years to happen anyway. So it's not something that you need to wait up for.
So I don't have to get my telescope out tonight. Is what you're saying.
No, and it's going to make the night sky brighter. Not hugely. I mean, it depends upon where the sun ends up at the end of the collision, and no one can give you a straight answer for that. If the sun ends up in the middle of the galaxy, then yes, the night sky would be brighter. If it got flung out towards the edges, then no, it would be darker, right? So there's no real way of being able to answer that.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Science Files continues on the other side of the break. We're going to stop, get updated on the news. On the other side of it, Dr. Rob, we have an update on the crows. You'll have to stay tuned to hear what the latest information is on this very Halifax unique, or Nova Scotia unique phenomenon that I witnessed last night. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. This is Science Files. He's Dr. Rob Thacker. I'm Dan Alstrand. The lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Earlier in the show, I described a phenomenon I saw last night, which was thousands upon thousands of black crows flying over my house, and which is, I've been told anyway, is a very Halifax phenomenon. Dr. Rob sees the same thing from his house, and we were kind of kicking around ideas as to why. So Kim has given us a call and has maybe a little bit of info on the crows. Kim, thanks for calling.
Oh, you're welcome, Dan. My daughter called and said you have to call in because you know this.
So what is it?
This time of year, that's the roost. So all of them, 8,000 to 10,000 of them, from Halifax, Dartmouth, Bedford, Sackville, Tantallon, any of those areas, you will see them flying to one spot. And that is the top of the hill at Mount St. Vincent. And
Ooh. Oh, no, we lost Kim. Kim, give us a call back, okay? Are you there? Anyway, I'm going to stick you on hold. She'll call back. I hope her Vanessa will deal with it. So the Mount Vincent theory is kind of playing out here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually reasonably well documented. That is the place they go to, right? But I've never been there when they're all there.
It's got to be loud.
Yeah.
And I don't know how people live around that.
Yeah. And so the other thing that I did, I actually was up at the Mount to take some photographs. And so I was, knowing that the crows were there, I was wondering whether there was like extra guano around. But
you got to be careful where you step. They're not like geese, where you get a gaggle of geese together and things go sideways, right?
Oh.
Literally sideways.
Yeah, Canada geese, anywhere they land, you don't want to walk there. You really don't.
All right, I think we have Kim back on the line. Kim, are you there?
Yes.
You were saying.
So this time of year, for 6 months, this will happen. It doesn't happen in the summer because they have smaller roosts.
Okay.
All of the crows depart their job, which is collecting food in your neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
At night, they go home. And home is at the top of the hill at the mount. Now, they're developing up there.
Right.
But they still go there. I called a specialist a few years ago to say, oh, my God, what will happen? Because I go up there all the time.
Is it loud? Is it really loud?
Oh, it's so incredible. You want to go up just at dusk and stand there and wait, and you will see them coming, huge numbers from every direction, and it's just wild. Wow. I love it. And once they're there, yes, it's very loud.
And then they just go to sleep.
Everybody
I was going to say, how do they sleep?
They sleep in trees. And sometimes when I'll have a crow show up, a little bit of white on the back, and I'm like, oh, you were on the lower branch, because they all, that's where they sleep.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you letting us know, Kim. Thank you.
Yes, everyone should get up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty.
All right.
Thank you very much. So, like I've always said, when you need something to know here, you either talk to Dr. Rob or you just get it out to the listeners. Smart people out there.
No, it's an amazing phenomenon.
It really is.
Yeah.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Dr. Rob, you sent me a couple of articles, as you normally do here, in preparation for our talk today. And I heard you having a conversation with some of my colleagues out in the newsroom about this flu test that you can you can taste it. How do you taste the flu test?
This is a really, really interesting story. So this is a piece of news out of the American Chemical Society, and so basically, when a virus gets into your cell, it's using an enzyme that's somehow or another breaking a particular microscopic bond on the surface of your cells. That's how it's getting inside, right? So if you can literally manufacture a molecule that has that particular bond that it's ready to break, right, then you could actually build something and connect another molecule with that bond, and then when you put the particular virus next to it, it's going to break that bond, so you'll literally break that new thing that you've created into two. So here's the thing, right? You make one of them something that you can taste, right? And so what they've done is to use thymol, which is the taste in the herb thyme, and connected that to create what they call the enzyme substrate. And so when you actually chew, then all of the virus is actually going to the gum, finding those molecules and then breaking them apart. So then you'll start to taste the thymol as those molecules get broken apart by all the little viruses, right, with their enzymes that they're using. And so this is a really interesting idea, apart from one thing, right? And that's, I kind of think I know when I have the flu.
Well, that's just it. Like, it's, anything's better than, and I know that flu's one thing and COVID's another thing, but it's, if we can come up with a way that we can test for these things without jamming those Q-tips up our nose, right?
Okay. So I'm being a little bit facetious. So I should actually talk about what it's really for. So this is for people who literally have strong resistance to flu, but are nonetheless carriers. So the asymptomatic
Which
carriers.
We see a lot.
Exactly. So this is something that these people would be able to chew. And, if lo and behold, even though you feel fine, you're actually infectious, then you can just sort of like be careful with wearing a mask, whatever, and so on. So this will have applications for that. I should say the tests that they've done so far, now they don't have the chewable test quite yet. They've literally put the saliva in a test tube and seen how long before you have enough of this stuff to come out. And that typically takes about 30 minutes, right? Which is actually quite a long time. But my guess would be if you're chewing, you're actively sort of like moving things around and activating things, so on. So it'll probably come out faster.
So if you don't have the virus, then you don't taste anything, correct?
Correct.
So you just eat this thing and it's like, okay, waiting for this
and you don't get it.
Timey taste.
Yep.
Wow. Well, like I said, anything better than jamming a Q-tip up your nose, that will certainly...
Yeah, that's not pleasant.
No, it's awful. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Eric to the show. Eric, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. How are you doing?
Good. Your question for Dr. Rob, please.
Yeah, Dr. Rob, I came across something very interesting. As you're aware, there's a lot of seismic activity going on the planet right now. And at the University of Alberta, they discovered this fault, or maybe they were aware of it, called the Tintina Fault. And it goes through Dawson City, I think, and it's about 1,000 kilometers long. And they said something very interesting. They say that it didn't respond the way it should be responding, and they're afraid there could be like a big-time earthquake that way. And they also said, and this is the point of my question, I guess, is that a lot of the glaciers and everything are melting, and they acted as a suppression for volcanic activity. And since we're going through the stages of interglacial warming period, could this be a cause or correlation to all this seismic activity that's happening right now?
So you're saying it's so as the glaciers are melting, they're releasing pressure? Is that what you're saying?
No, what they said was, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't explain it correctly. What they said was that a lot of the seismic faults in Canada and some of the volcanoes we have been suppressed by the glaciers from the last ice age. And since now they're melting, they're starting to allow the volcanoes to become active again. So I'm just wondering if there's a correlation between seismic activities and being in the middle of, we'll say, a glacial warming period.
So I'm not a geologist, so I'm really going to be very careful about what I say on this. So my reaction to that is yes. If you're under a 2-kilometer ice sheet, I can kind of believe that, because that's a lot of mass. Whereas an individual glacier, although it's big, right, it's not like a huge glacial ice sheet would be. Right, so but I don't know. I'm not a geologist, so I'd have to see what they're saying in detail. To be fair.
Yeah, I mean that's the best way I can explain it. I'm not a geologist either, but I found it very interesting that there's a lot more things in our structure of Canada than what we're aware of. Right. So, anyways,
because I mean it's certainly true that since we had the last ice age, there are parts of North America that are still rebounding from that, right? That sort of like gives you an idea of how much pressure there was.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know it's kind of a tough question, and I realize you're not a geologist, but you're a pretty smart guy. And you guys deal with this sort of stuff. So
all right, Eric.
I just thought I'd give you a question. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, sir. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to take our last break. Dr. Rob will be here on the other side of it. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes.
Axe.
Welcome back. Dr. Rob's here till the top of the hour. If you have a science-related question, here's a good opportunity, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's go right to the phones and welcome Sam to the show. Sam, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Your question for Dr. Rob, please.
So my question is, I just wanted to get Dr. Rob's opinion on something. So modern-day industrial animal agriculture, it's pretty insane for a number of reasons.
Sure.
Like the barbaric cruelty being one, the amount of rainforest and wilderness all over the world that get cheap beef, and the breeding ground for,
animal health problems,
bacteria. So I think a great solution that seems to be on the horizon for this issue is lab-grown meat, and I want to know what Dr. Rob's opinion on that is.
So I've tried a number of the products that are available.
Really?
Right? So yeah, and not too bad. Right. I wouldn't say anything sort of like stands out as being particularly tasty versus normal meat. I mean, I'm not a vegetarian. I should be honest about that. So, but I don't have a problem with it at all, and I'm more than interested in trying different variants. Now, where I do have some concerns is there's often an issue, and then they have to start using emulsifiers and things like that to keep everything bound and so on. So I still think there's a lot more research ultimately to be done on this to produce things that are, how can I put it, suitable for human consumption without long-term issues. I mean, that's not to say there aren't those issues in the current practice of farming animals that we have. I mean, it's been fairly widely documented about the issues of like growth hormones in meat and things like that. But I would like to see a little bit more work on that in the long run. But yeah, I'm certainly interested in it and have certainly tried some of the products that are available at the moment.
Yeah, I think hopefully, they can kind of iron out the issues, because I think it just seems like a great way to reduce like a massive amounts of animal suffering, to, recover massive amounts of wilderness that have been destroyed, and, could potentially, I think, make meat even more affordable in the long run too, because it's expensive.
Potentially, right? I mean, I'm sure you understand that it's the question of the economy of scale at the end of the day, right? Because we're replacing one type of industry with another industry. So,
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, personally, I don't eat meat, but I know lots of people. Not everyone is going to go vegetarian or vegan. That's just not going to happen. But I think, I don't know. I just wanted to hear your opinion.
I think we're going to see more and more of it. Right? Is my honest take on it. But at the moment, as far as I remember, the products are still fairly expensive. Right. And so until it becomes a reasonable sort of like cost-effective alternative, I don't see it being a significant or achieving significant market penetration until that happens. And that's the challenge, right? Because how do you get to that economy of scale where you can produce these things that cheap? That's going to be tough. And on top of that, right, if you're having these massive bioreactors, just imagine the problems they're going to have if something goes wrong with infection or something like that.
Appreciate the call, Sam. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Did it, and this is probably a bad question, but did it taste like meat?
Yep.
So you wouldn't have known if somebody would have told you that it was?
I'd have thought it was meat, yep.
Really?
That's fine, yep.
Huh.
Like, I mean, most of the things I've tried are the vegetable alternative ones.
Right.
And to be honest, one of my favorite burgers is literally a black bean burger that I had at the Tide and Boar in Moncton, which was incredible, right? And that was just something regular that someone had come up with the particular recipe for, and that was really, really nice. Now, obviously, nutritionally, that's quite different in terms of the protein compared to having, I don't know, a regular beef burger. But no, I've tried stuff, and it was okay. Right, and I say that with a qualified, it was okay, because I think someone who likes a particular taste is going to like that particular taste, and so no matter what you give them, they're going to have a preference for something else, right? But I think the uptake issue is going to be primarily the one that I talked about, the industrialization of it all. That's going to be the thing.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's get Alexander on the air. Alexander, how are you?
I'm fine, Dan. How are you today?
Good. Your question, please.
Hi, Dr. Thacker.
Hi.
Two quick questions. One, Dr. Thacker, I think you've mentioned on the show that the moon's orbit is actually pulling away from the Earth. Is that correct?
Very slowly, yeah.
Would it come to a point where it actually would just leave, escape?
Yes, but there's going to be other things happen before we get to that point, right? There's going to be things happen with the stability of the solar system before we actually get to that point.
Oh, it's okay. So it's not something. It's
right. So
millions of years in the future.
So here's the thing that's got the sort of like millions of years time scale. So the last time we ever have a total solar eclipse, I think that's something like 100 million years in the future or something like that.
Okay. Question two. I was reading some scientists actually were saying some of the larger stars might actually have black holes inside them. Is that true?
So that's a theory, right? But it is possible that you could have stars that are so massive, say about 100 times the mass of the sun, and they won't last for very long, right? That they already have gone an internal collapse and they literally have a black hole, or black stars as they're called, inside them, right? But that's theoretical, right? We can do actually the physics of trying to know what they would look like and what kind of emission they would have, right? But that's primarily a theoretical idea at the moment.
Okay, so nothing we've seen or
it's really, really challenging, right, to actually see something like that, although we do have a very small number of candidates that might, possibly be, but no one's going to stick their head out on that right now.
No, it's just because everything I've heard about black hole, does it not ingest anything that comes close to it? And
it will. So sooner or later the stuff is going to fall in, but what you've got to remember is you've got an envelope with a lot of energy in it, and that, right, plus the energy that's released as the material falls into the black hole is actually going to keep on powering the star. There's a whole envelope around the black hole that literally acts to diffuse the energy outward. Right? We actually, funnily enough, we were talking about this in the department a few weeks ago.
Okay. No, great. I probably appreciate your information. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Alexander. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. And whenever we talk about black holes, I get to say it, Dr. Rob.
Yeah, here we go.
Black holes don't suck.
Yay.
Things fall in.
Exactly.
See?
Yep.
I learn stuff on this show every time we do this. We're just about out of time, Dr. Rob. I'm going to take these last couple of seconds here to remind everybody that on Friday, we're going to have a very special edition of this program. The Todd Veinotte Show will be going on the road. We're heading down the road, as the old saying is. We're going all the way down to the west in Nova Scotia, where we'll be doing a live broadcast from 10 until 1 to celebrate our 20th anniversary. The radio station signed on 20 years ago on Friday-ish. So we are going to celebrate that with a special edition. We're going to bring in a bunch of guests. Dr. Rob's going to make an appearance when he's there.
I'll try and be there.
And we're going to bring some alumni back on that you haven't heard from a while. We'll bring some special guest stars on there as well. There'll be cake. There'll be all kinds of fun, and there might even be a giveaway. So if you're planning to be in Halifax or you're down in the South End on Friday, pop by the West in Nova Scotia between 10 and 1 and say hi, and maybe we'll have a pen or a sticker or something, and we can put faces to names, and look forward to it. We did it on our 10th anniversary, and it was a whole lot of fun, so we're going to do it again on our 20th, and I hope that you can join us as well. It promises to be a fun episode. Thanks, Dr. Rob. We'll see you next Tuesday if we don't see you Friday for sure.
Oh, thanks everyone for the great questions as well.
That is Dr. Rob Thacker here every Tuesday for Science Files. Thanks to Vanessa Vandenez, who works yeoman's work behind the screen, doing all of the things, keeping everything in line, pushing all the buttons. Without her, we just don't have a show. Thanks to all of our guests, including Dr. Rob, for spending some time with us and imparting their knowledge. Thanks to all of you for picking up the phone, dialing the numbers, and joining the conversation. Without you, it'd be pretty boring radio, and I'm glad, and you make my day each and every day that you do it. Programming note, 9 o'clock tonight, Blue Jays baseball on your radio, not on the stream, on your radio at 95.7. You can cheer on the Jays with the rest of the country as we go for the sweep of the New York Yankees, break Todd Veinott's hearts, and advance to the American League Championship Series. It'll be a fantastic game. Until then, everybody, thanks for joining us. Be well, and remember, be kind to one another.